Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'm going to start you off by showing you a sounding. So when we launch weather balloons, these are the data that we collect and we plot them on these very interesting graphics here that tell us meteorologists a lot of neat things. Now, I recorded this video before we launched what's called the 12Z sounding here in the morning on Tuesday. So that's about 7 o'clock in the morning, or that is 7 o'clock in the morning. And so this is a forecast sounding, so we can generate these with models. And what I want to point out to you on this particular diagram is what you see in the upper left-hand corner of the image here. So when you look at this, this is the temperature here, so we'll just label that, and this is the dew point temperature here, so we'll label that TD. And what you're looking at here, I want you to focus in on, is right down here at the very bottom. So this is going up in the atmosphere in this direction, and then temperatures are increasing this way and then decreasing that way. And what I want you to see is this feature right here. That's a temperature inversion. So you can see how the temperatures are increasing with height before decreasing as you go up. So the top of the inversion is sitting here roughly about 400 to 500 meters above the surface. Now, where I took this sounding from was near in the Panhandle of Texas. So let's go take a look at what was going on there. This animation you're about to watch here shows you the storms from yesterday evening that pulled through parts of Texas and Oklahoma into Arkansas and eventually spread over into parts of Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi. And that's a snapshot of where they were relatively early this morning, just about sunrise. Now, if I take you back and let you just watch this again, I want you to actually see what was going on over in Texas. Now, we know we got a lot of heavy rain out of this through Arkansas last night. We're going to look at that in a second. But all of a sudden, you notice that as I get you into the overnight hours, this is midnight, through the early morning hours, you start to see a bunch of echoes that show up right in through here. And these radar echoes are from non-meteorological targets. Specifically, they are mostly from wind turbines. So this is what happens. Imagine, I'm just going to draw on the bottom left-hand side of this. Let's just say that that's the surface of the Earth, and we've got a radar right here. So there's the radar dish. Now, normally what happens is the radar beam goes out and up, and it does that because of the curvature of the Earth and the change of something called the index of refraction that has to do with the density of the atmosphere. All right. Now, if for some reason the temperature takes on a different characteristic than the normal standard atmosphere, which means cooling with height. In other words, if you get an inversion, the radar beam can actually become ducted. And what that means is it ends up staying level or even comes back down toward the surface of the Earth. And when that happens, it'll often intersect the very tops of the wind turbines because they can stick up very, very high in the sky. And so we get echoes from them, and that's what those echoes are. So I thought you might want to know what that was if you're ever watching local radar and you see it overnight, and that's what you get. All the rest of this stuff, these big blotches that you see, like the one that you see down here, for example, you can see them all over the radar. These are often due to what we call clear air turbulence, Bragg scattering, and mostly from bugs, birds, and stuff like that. So kind of a fun, neat little radar lesson to get this started. Well, what's going on? Well, we derive this product from radar reflectivity, which is the echoes. And this is showing us through 6 a.m. this morning where all of our precipitation was last night. So your last 48 hours all added up here, and we can see that those storms, as they moved out of Texas, we did get one tornado report, then moved into parts of Oklahoma, eastern Texas, then over to Arkansas, and this morning setting up a line that's moving through Mississippi and Alabama. So some pretty heavy rainfall out of this. Some locations picking up over 1.5 to 2 inches of rain right in through here. Now today, as these storms progress in the early morning, so the main boundary sitting about right here as I was recording this, we do have the threat for strong to severe storms in southern Alabama, Georgia, and then getting into northern Florida and parts of southern South Carolina. As this low pressure system finally pulls into the mid-Atlantic here into the Carolinas, very wet day on tap for this area. So let's go take a look at it here. Now this is going to start about 2 o'clock in the morning, so I rewound it a little bit here. Let's pause it early or mid-morning this morning. So you see those storms here. It is about 6 o'clock this morning pulling through Mississippi over into Alabama. Plenty of moisture, a destabilized atmosphere out ahead of it. So a lot of early morning thunder for those folks down here in southern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. On the northern side of this, you can see that the rain pulling through Tennessee, Kentucky, over toward Virginia, into North and South Carolina. And by this evening, a real soaker for parts of parts of North Carolina. Okay, that pulls on out of here such that by the time we get into early morning tomorrow, it's really only the Outer Banks that are still dealing with some light rain. You're going to see as I play this forward throughout the day on Wednesday, even getting into early Thursday morning, the rest of the south gets a bit of a break from all of this. So total accumulated precipitation just over the next 24 hours, just to kind of show you some of these storms are capable of producing about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain. So it's going to depend on where your location is with respect to the thunderstorm as to how much precipitation you're expecting. But you can see that on the northern side of this, a larger blanket here of 3/4 of an inch to upwards of maybe 1 inch, and then higher amounts as you get into where the mountains force the air to rise a little farther. But you saw that as you got over to the eastern side of North Carolina, maybe some heavier rain there, potential for grabbing 1 inch plus, certainly in the cards as this low pressure system slowly pulls off the east coast. Now watch what happens after that. This is basically the next 5 days. So get through tomorrow. This is what follows that. Much of the southeast in through this area up into the mid-south is going to get a bit of a break. And what we're going to be watching here is storms to erupt again in parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And they're a part of a bigger system that's pulling into the Pacific Northwest. So let's go take a look at the timing and location of these storms while much of the southeast gets a bit of a break through the weekend here. So here it is. This is the upper levels of the atmosphere. Here's the main shortwave that's sneaking through this morning, causing our severe weather threat over for the south. So this is the mid-level flow that's reflective of the low pressure system at the surface, in fact helping to create it. Now here is the trough that's coming through the northwest, and it's going to be combining up with it. We're seeing the very bottom of the subtropical jet stream right in through here to produce a system that's going to sweep through the northern part of the United States but pull on a lot of Gulf moisture. So to show you what that looks like, I'm going to go straight to the European model. Let's pause it here because we've seen through this far. This is Thursday morning. So at this point that trough is pulled on through, and you can now see we're trying to develop one low here and a second low up here in Manitoba. And so this is going to be pulling out ahead of it. See that? The Gulf moisture as high pressure settles in like we talked about over the southeast. So our chances for storms on Thursday night increase into this area. Right now, the thinking is that they're going to be sub-severe. As we pull through the day on Friday, so this is now Friday morning to afternoon, we watch again because that upper level low just sits and spins there. And so we have this broad frontal trough. See it right there? And sitting along it is where we have our best chances of showers and storms. So this is why toward the end of the week we saw, again, Thursday through Friday, we see our chances for storms in through this area, rain and thunderstorms. Well, pulling through the weekend, this is now Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening. You see that frontal boundary takes its dear sweet time to really move across North America, and it leaves the tail end of it just sitting right here over Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and parts of Oklahoma. And that's why we saw the precipitation amounts coming up here in this region. But it's going to finally pull on through toward the end of the weekend, starting our next week. And this is where the atmosphere kind of reloads again. We start to step back and say, why do we keep reloading with troughs in this area? It was one of the main highlights of yesterday's video that we released discussing the changeover in this pattern. So this gets you out about a week. So this is to at least next Monday afternoon and evening. And once again, we see more low pressure systems developing in the middle part of the country and pulling that Gulf moisture with no trouble out. So warm and wet seems to be the name of the game for much of our southern region. Let me just show you week 2 now, kind of put together in aggregate. So I've been getting back into doing some model comparison. Lately, the GFS model has been doing better, and I want to show you some of its results again, and we can compare it to the European, which is on the right. So this is exclusively looking at week 2, and you can almost see, look at the GFS, you can almost see the shape of these cyclones. Remember, they all look like commas or candy canes, if you will. And this just tells me that the upper flow of the atmosphere must be doing something like this, because that's drawing in the Gulf moisture, that's putting in the heavier precip amounts for the west coast as it pulls into the trough, and these low pressure systems as they race off take on that shape. And you can see the GFS and the European model both in agreement over what's happening here over week 2. So this is going to be the 7th through the 14th of April. All right. Taking a look at that pattern, just look, right here is our omega block. And as you see it right in there, this will be the trough starting off week 2 that'll come sweeping through the United States. Now certainly with the ridge that's building out ahead of it, that's a lot of Gulf of Mexico moisture return. But with low pressure systems forming here and racing off in this direction, things are going to be on the wetter side of things. And you can see the position of our next block sitting upstream in the Atlantic. Now this was the trough we thought was going to be sitting over the East Coast, but it's out of the way, and therefore our temperatures are really going to rebound. So what do we have here? This is our total accumulated growing degree day anomalies. So we're looking here for just the month of March, and we can see that as you go down south, some of these numbers, especially as you get closer to the Gulf Coast, are anywhere between 150 and some locations well over 200 GDUs ahead of normal. And what I'm showing you here is that we're not slowing that down much. Over the next 5 days, yeah, we have some cooler weather that's coming through just temporarily, though. This is your next 5 days of temperature anomalies. But to show you how we got here, much of that cooler weather is just today and tomorrow. So this is a snapshot of today's high temperatures on Tuesday compared to normal. And those high temperatures here, might be struggling to get into the low 60s in the Carolinas, and even cooler as you get back here into Tennessee and northern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Now, as we play this one forward, though, cooler weather still sits over there in the Carolinas for Wednesday, but you're going to see that getting out of there for Thursday, back over to normal by the middle and end of this week. And as we pull our way through the end of the week, that's where that main frontal boundary is going to be sitting. So parts of the panhandles here and much of Oklahoma on the cooler side for Friday and into Saturday. But by Sunday, things just rebound once again. There's Monday's departure from normal. And you can really see the atmosphere favoring the cooler out here and that bigger ridge pushing across the eastern half of the country. So take a look at day 5 through 10. That is the story. And that was the major change that we discussed in the weekend model updates in yesterday morning's weather forecast video. Looking all the way out to day 10 through 15, I want to show you the GFS versus the European. So the GFS is on the left, the European is over here on the right. The European seems to be a bit more aggressive with bringing in some cooler weather farther east than the GFS does. And that's interesting because usually all winter it's been that the GFS has been so cold compared to what actually happens. It's had a major cold bias. And now the GFS appears to be the warmer of the two models. We're going to keep an eye on it. I'll keep showing it to you. But there's one thing for certain, and that is the trough that is developing here seems to be a feature that we're going to be watching throughout much of the mid-month of April. And so what we've got here is that pattern, and that pattern is going to favor above average temperatures for much of our southern region. So one last thing to show you. I got brand new updates long range. This is, again, I'm going to show you, excuse me, April 8th through May 8th. And let's start temperatures. We don't see much of a change here. Notice the models have continued to keep us on the warmer side of things. So the rapid accumulation of heat units and of GDUs is on to start this year. But we know that a ridge in spring over the southeast means that there's going to more than likely be a trough somewhere to our west, and that is going to team up with the strong subtropical branch of the jet stream. And we just keep seeing it pull extra moisture in through this area. So now this would be the 9th time in a row that I've showed you for spring that part of the U.S. is still favoring wetter than average conditions. And so as a consequence of that, we are going to have trouble in the Delta, trouble in parts of the Mid-South and in the Southeast with really being able to find decent, wide open, time periods of getting some field work done. So if you can take advantage after the system moves through in the next couple of days for that 5-day drier time period that's coming up in the near term we just talked about, take advantage of it because it looks as though we're going to favor more wetter conditions than drier. So we'll wrap it up there. Look forward to talking again tomorrow with my long range update. Have a good one. Thank you.